Hey, you know what simple technique gives me goosebumps every time that I hear it? Walk downs and walk ups. Think Landslide or Rocky Raccoon. Pigeon's Bible, loud and afraid of changing. So right here in this post, you're going to get access to a full 60-minute workshop. I'm pulling back the curtain and giving you access to the full workshop that shows you exactly how to use walk-ups and walk-downs to turn basic progressions into something cinematic and expressive and uniquely yours. And normally these weekly live workshops are only for my Folk Guitar MasterClass members, but this one was just such a blast and it was so universally useful that I just wanted to share it with everybody. And also it gives you a sneak peek about what it's like to be a Folk Guitar Masterclass student. And for those of you who don't know, Folk Guitar Masterclass is my online lessons platform where I help stuck beginners learn to play with the emotional depth of their heroes. So grab your guitar, grab a coffee or a tea or whatever your libation is, and let's dive into this thing. And by the way, leave your questions in the comment. I'm happy to help. Guys, so let's talk about our lesson for today, using walk downs and walk ups in our chord progressions. Basically, it's like creating your own lead melodies in your chord progressions, but it's a specific kind of lead melody that's in the bass. We've heard this in, like really classic chord progressions like Landslide. You can kind of hear that walk down. Or maybe Dust in the Wind. Is this Dust in the Wind? Is that, what song is that? Freebird. Yep, I did it. Sorry, guys. Or maybe Hide Your Love Away by the Beatles. Okay, so you hear the way that these melodies are sort of like traveling like a trail, like on a map. You can kind of, if you kind of get synesthetic with it for a second, like you can almost visualize a melody. As it travels through our chord progression. All right, so what I just played were examples of walk downs, or the opposite is a walk up, where maybe you go from an A minor up through that note up till you hit that C. So what it does is it offers this melodic bridge between chords. So instead of just going maybe A minor to C, you go, this one little note in between. It creates this melodic bridge, and it feels more cinematic, it feels more emotional, and it feels like it's got this heightened sense of musicality. And it might not always be the right move for your chord progressions, but it might be the right move. So there are instances where it is and where it's not the right move. And what I want to have you guys leave with today is the ability to use them in your own songs and to understand what they are and why they sound the way they do. So just basically, like, instead of just, I do want to show you the template so that you just, like, if you don't want to go deeper into the theory, you just know by looking at a little diagram where to do it. You can just do it. But for those of you that enjoy knowing why things work, I want you to have the knowledge of what's going on under the hood, so that this feels like something that you truly understand. And when you hear it in your favorite songs, you can just go, I know what that is, and I know why it works. Okay, so for those of you that are also visual learners, I just wrote this out so that we can, I can share it. Here. Okay, so the examples that I just played are right here, and these chord symbols right here, it's like a G/B. You would read that as G. The letter on the left is the name of the chord that you're playing. So in this case, it would be a G chord, and then you would say the letter name on the right as
in the bass or over that letter name. So you'd call this a G over B, or you'd call it a G with a B in the bass. Right? So you see those out in the wild in your tabs, and you might look at that and go, screw that, there's no way in hell I want to even, it just looks really intimidating. But all it is saying, again, this is the chord, just like a G chord. If you saw it in the wild, you'd be like, okay, I know how to play a G chord. Then on the right is the note that is the lowest note in the chord, the bass note in the chord. So G with a B in the bass, D with an F sharp in the bass, D with a C in the bass. So all you'd need to do is play the chord and then figure out some way to put an F sharp in the lowest note in this chord. So in this case, a D over F sharp, you might take your thumb and play fret 2 on your low E string. That's a D over F sharp. All right? But we're going to get into all this. I just kind of wanted to decodify what these chord symbols mean. Okay? All right, so bass walk-ups and walk-downs are melodies that are created by using notes that are contained within the key. So every key, every chord progression is built with a key in mind, or just like a scale that has 7 notes in it. And think about it as sort of like a painter's palette, where they're painting a picture and they only have 7 different colors of paint to choose from. That's kind of what a key is. We've got 7 different notes, and every chord, every melody that we're going to use in that song is created from only those 7 notes. So that's what I mean here by every key is made from 7 specific notes. And they appear, since the guitar has 6 strings and there are, I don't know, 18 frets on each string, all these notes, these 7 notes within a key, or any note that we can play, you could play it in a ton of different locations on the guitar. They're all over the place. But today, since we're in the folk singer-songwriter world, we're going to focus on the locations of these notes within the bottom 3 or 4 frets, because we want them to be able to be reachable while we're still playing chords, instead of like having to be like hop way up here like a Hendrix style thing, which is cool, but that's just not what we're gonna talk about today. Okay. And at any point, guys, if anybody's like got a question, the last thing I want is for you to feel like you can't unmute and be like, hey, I need clarity on that, because all this builds on itself. So if anything doesn't feel quite solid for you, again, please, you're encouraged to just unmute and ask the question, because I might not be using the clearest language possible, so you're helping me to understand how to better describe these things if you have questions and you ask them. So feel free to unmute at any time. Okay, so the secret to writing melodies in your chord progressions, and again, walk-ups and walk-downs are just melodies, but in the bass. They could be up high on high strings too, but we're talking about more or less in the bass here. The secret to writing these melodies or finding these melodies is by choosing notes that are contained within the key. And you can think of these notes that are in the key as sort of like stones across a stream. Like if you were in the woods and you're on a hike and you had to get to the other side and there are stones across, you would have to jump to the stones. And if you don't jump on a stone, you're going to get wet. And in this case, if you don't jump on a stone, you're going to get a sour sounding note. So the idea is that the stones are laid out in front of us, and if we just know where to look for them, we can choose any of them based on where we're at. And we've got a diagram of all that stuff here, and we're going to get to that. But just so you know, it's as simple as looking at a diagram and knowing which key you're in and just seeing like, oh, all of these notes are available to me to create melodies within my chord progressions. Okay, so that was just a quick look ahead. Okay, so again, walk-ups and walk-downs in your chord progressions, they're just like regular melodies in your chords, in your chord progressions, but typically they're more in the bass. They kind of hang out in the bass. And I got an email from a Folk Guitar MasterClass student. I was just kind of like checking in. It's just like, hey, you're new. Is there anything that I can help you with? And again, if you ever want to email me, please feel free. And my aim is to be super accessible to everybody, so please don't hesitate. But yeah, he was asking about what's the deal with walk-ups and walk-downs and playing them in your chord progressions. And it was the inspiration for doing this today. And one of the questions he asked was, do they have to be single notes, or can they be part of a chord? And I thought that was a really cool question. So if we were to look at this chord progression right here, C, G over B to A minor. I'm going to bring us to this right here. You might hear my 4-year-old banging around upstairs. Sorry about that. Okay, so take a look at this here. This is how you would play that C, G over B, A minor chord progression. But let's take a look here as a single note. You can, and the answer to his question, and a question you might be having, are these walk downs exclusively single notes, or can they be chords too? And the answer is both. And I want to walk you through both examples here. Okay, so here's an example of how to do that walk down as a single note. So if we have our C chord right here, and then we would walk down. You play fret 2 on your A string, and then we go to our A minor. So if you see these notes right here, fret 3, fret 2, fret 0, we're creating this chain, this like link of chain link of notes. All right, and you could do this in between walk down note as a single note if you wanted. Okay. But you could also do it as a full chord, and just that walk down note would be the lowest note within your chord. So this, for example, can you hear the difference there? When we have the extra notes within the chord ringing out, it fills it out a little bit. There's no better or worse way. It's just it's an alternative. This one feels more precise, more surgical, a little cleaner. This one feels like it's more melodic. It's got more information in it. And so the difference here is that when I play a full chord, when I play a single note, all I'm doing is just isolating the lowest note within that chord in between. And if you can see here, this G over B, if you put a dot here and a dot right here, can you see how this would be a normal G chord? All I'm doing is playing a partial chord of a G chord, and I'm just leaving out the low E and the high E string, and I'm only playing the middle 4 strings. So can you see how this is actually just a partial G constellation? Cool. So far, does anybody have any questions about this? Anything feel like confusing or anything to add?
So reading that, why would a beginner mortal like me understand that is the B, the B under G? Because to see, I mean, I guess you play all the strings all the way through the B. Is that why?
So you're wondering, why does this symbol tell you that this is how to play the chord?
Why?
You always ask great questions. You do. So I'm encouraging you to talk it out. Yeah, go for it.
Thank you. My brain doesn't operate like most people, so I worry that I go off in a tangent. But
no, it's great. Go for it.
Okay. So why is that called a GB?
Okay, great question. So if I was to do, check this out. If I was, for those of us that read tab, check this out here. Okay, and if I was to change this chord symbol. Okay, so take a look at this. You see how this is a normal G chord? Now, that would be the symbol for that would just be a regular G. And when we add a slash and then some other note, what this is telling us is that we're still playing a regular G chord, excuse me, except that now this is telling us, this is giving us a code saying the lowest note in this G chord is going to be the letter that we're telling you right here. So in this case, the lowest note in this G chord is going to be a B. Okay? So the way to manipulate this chord shape so that this becomes correct, so that the lowest note is in fact B, is we need to find a B note somewhere in here and make it the lowest note that we strum. And so the easiest way to do that, or the first opportunity we have to do that, is to make this note right here the very lowest note that we play. So that means we need to leave this note out because it's lower than the B. Okay? So that would mean I would take this note away, and it's still a G chord because it contains all of the bones of a G chord. It contains the first and the third and the fifth step of the G scale. And that's a deeper conversation about how chords are created, but just so you know.
I get it. I was thinking B string to make the note.
Oh, gotcha. Yep. So
like it also lands at the last string is the B. It lands on the B. I was thinking that's what that was telling.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
That's coincidence that the last string is a B, because we could have this be the G. The only thing this B in this slash B tells us is that B needs to be the lowest note in this chord. It doesn't tell us anything about what the highest note is. Great question. Again, I always love when you ask the questions because it helps me like wrap my head around the best way to explain things. So please don't ever hesitate. That's awesome. Cool. All right. So let's take a look at a different version here. Let's go a G, walk down to an E minor. And you may have played these things before, but this is me looking to kind of like explain what's going on under the hood. Okay, so if we have this G as we walk down to E minor, the single note version of it is you just play fret 2 in between. Okay. And the chord version of it, if we wanted to really fill this out and play the chord that this is the lowest note of, it's actually called a D over F sharp. So if we use the logic that we were talking about before, this is a D chord. This is telling us we need a D chord. So this is how you play your D chord. But this is saying somehow make the lowest note in this D chord an F sharp. All right, and so the way that we can do that in order to create this walk down shape right here is to play this note right here on our second fret. And this might be difficult for some people who have a wider guitar neck or smaller hands, but you can. I think it's really worth working on using your thumb to play some of these lower notes, fret 1 or fret 2 on your low E string. It's a technique that like Townes Van Zandt, John Prine, just a ton of classic players use. So if you can, work on that. So this D over F sharp is like playing a D chord. So if we all just play a regular D chord, and then see if you can get that thumb over, not too far over. You don't want to like totally obliterate your posture here, but just enough over so that you can press only fret 2. And go ahead and give that a strum. Okay, and so this is a way that we can have this bass melody going through this walk down and still get the full chord behind it. So what we end up getting here is if we were to play this whole thing, these 3 chords in a row, you get your G, D over F sharp, so you play a D chord, put thumb on 2nd fret, could walk it back up if you reverse it. Okay. And here's an alternative if this feels funky to you. You could do a G over F sharp. So this just basically means like, oops, this should be an X like that. So this just basically means you could put maybe your middle finger on fret 2 and use the middle finger's angle to mute your A string. You see when I pluck that A string, it thuds. That's what we want because we don't want that open A string. So this is a little bit of an easier way to get this walk down with chords. So you got your G, and then this next chord, which is a G over F sharp, and then your E minor. Okay. So in the last 15 minutes here, I want to talk about where these lily pad notes are, because it's like, okay, great, I can look at this one example, this tiny little example of how to do this walk down, but how does that help me moving forward? We want to, theory is really great because it allows us to use certain ideas and apply them to a whole bunch of different scenarios instead of, so in that case you memorize one concept and you get the benefit of being able to use it in a lot of different ways, as opposed to memorizing a million different variations of what a walk down is in a chord, and then all of a sudden now you're responsible for remembering a lot of different small bits of information. So in the last 15 minutes, I want to see if we can get the framework around it so that you know how to apply this in a lot of different ways. But before I do, who's got questions? Sandra, what do you got?
Sorry, I keep dominating with questions, but you just,
No,
so on that note, you sort of touched on something like the concept of, a bell just went off when you were suggesting muting the A string while playing the G over F with just by internally, I mean, because a G is open, but one way to mute the strings you don't want to hit when they're harder to skip is just to barely touch it, put your finger on it and mute it instead
Absolutely.
of isolate those. Because I mean, I would look at that and go, okay, I have to hit the sixth string and then jump to the middle strings and then miss the one string, and that's impossible.
Right, unless you're finger picking and you do it with your thumb and you pull the other.
Right.
But that's not always an option that we want to use. So yeah, you can use a lot of times you can use the angle of a finger to intentionally mute a string underneath to remove it from your chord, so that you just get this low key thud. And like if I play this, the thud is inaudible. You can't. That's a sound within the chord, but it gets masked by everything. You can't hear it, and I remove the unwanted note. So yeah, a lot of times we think of touching a string below as a bad thing, but sometimes you want to use it. So yeah, remember that is a tool that you can use to clean up your chords if you want. Cool. All right, so before we hop into the framework of this, is there anybody that's got any questions about these two examples that we've gone over right here?
I have a quick question, James. From a songwriting perspective, does it matter going up or down, or it's up and down? Would it walk up or walk down? Is there like a certain feel that you're looking for, or is it just the way it sounds to the writer?
Awesome question. They're both, so like the purpose of a walk down or a walk up is to inject a little bit more melody, a little bit more catchiness into your chord progression, so that we don't have block chords. You know, just think about like C to A minor. But if we add that walk down, there's just a little bit more sweetness to that. So the walk down adds the same level of sweetness as the walk up does. It's up to the writer to decide whether or not a walk down or a walk up is necessary in communicating the emotion that you want to get across. So to answer your question, there's no better or worse like application for this, walk down or walk up. It just depends on what are the chords you're changing between. Are you going from a C to an A minor? Then the only option is this walk down. But if you're going from an A minor to a C, your only option is the walk up. So it doesn't matter, and also it's just completely up to the writer if you want that extra sweetness in the melody in your chords. Does that hit all the points, Bob? Cool. Nice, great question. All right. So let's go to the maps, the note maps. Now let's go back to the analogy of the stones in the stream, or the lily pads, or whatever you want to think of it as. So the fretboard writ large is it's the stream, and the notes within the key are the stones. And so what you're looking at here looks a little nuts, looks a little complicated, but I want to mention that this is just the 7 notes of the scale that the key is based off of repeating. All right, so there are more than 7 notes here, but all of these notes contained in these diagrams, they're just the same 7 notes repeated. So these are all the notes in the key of C, the 7 notes just repeated. These are all the notes in the key of A, just repeated, and the same here. The notes in the key of C are different from the notes in the key of A. You can see that, like, this note right here is not here, and in any of the other keys. So I want to make that distinction that the key of C does not contain the same notes as the key of A or the key of G, but each key only contains 7 notes. And what we're looking at here is the location of those 7 notes in like repeated in the bottom 3 frets. Okay, so if anybody's looking at this and saying this looks like an electrical schematic and I hate it, I would encourage you to only focus on the keys that you use the most. And I'm going to go out on a limb here, and just from all the people I've worked with and all the years that I've played and all, just all the collective knowledge that I've gained, most people play in the key of G or the key of C. Jim likes the key of E, I remember you saying, or we were talking about this last time. Yeah. So not to say that you should start with learning the notes in the key of C or the key of G. All to say is, if you know which key you tend to play in the most, just go to that one key. Don't memorize all 5. Just go to the one that's most useful to you. And also, if you find yourself playing in a key that you don't normally play in, just reference this chart. And this is in the Creating Your Own Melodies module. So it's module 9 in the ornamentations pillar of the Folk Guitar MasterClass. In the follow-up email, I'll put a link to that module so that you can go straight to it, and this diagram will be there. Okay, so use that. Okay, so if anybody's feeling like, okay, well, I don't know which key I'm playing in or which key I play in the most, here's a list of the chords in the keys that we're concerned about. So if you play a song and these are the chords that are within it, then you would use this one. Or if you play a song and these are the only chords that are in it, then you would use this one. And the way that this works is, say I've got a chord progression that goes G, D, C. All right, so I could look down here and I'd have to find, okay, well, which key has the G chord, the C chord, and the D chord? You'd look here and you'd say, oh, the D in the C, the key of C has a D chord in it, but it's a D minor. So I'm not in the key of C because the D chord is a major D. So you'd have to keep looking for which key contains all of the chords that you're playing. And the only answer is the key of G. Okay? So let's say, let's go back to our example here of this chord progression where we did a walk down from G to E minor. And I want to show you why this note 2 works. So if we go to the key of G, so take a look here. See this lily pad, this stone in the stream? It exists in your key of G framework right there. So if you wanted to change, so if you wanted to add some melody between your chord changes, or you wanted to add melodies to any chord progression that you do, any of these notes will work. All right, so but if we think about a G chord, if we play a G chord, and then look at your hand and see which note is the lowest note in that chord. It's fret 3 of your low E string. Okay, and then we know we've got an E minor chord that comes after it. Okay, so let's play an E minor chord, and then look at your neck and identify what's the lowest note in this chord. It's the open E string. It's this guy. So we just changed between two chords where the bass note, the lowest note was this, and then it was this. And so if we wanted to add extra sweetness, extra melody, we wanted to do a walk down in between these two chords, we would look at this map and we'd say, what is our option? Where is the stone in the stream between these two chords? The only option is this. Okay? And so that applies to any chord change within this key. So like let's take a look at a more advanced example, the pre-chorus to Hide Your Love Away. You've Got to Hide Your Love Away by the Beatles. And again, that chord progression goes. My guitar is as out of tune as some of those old Beatles recordings are. So what I just did there, here, let me bring up the chord progression. Right here. So we've got what I just did, if you guys want to follow along. So I did a D chord where my lowest note is the open D string. And then the single note walk down run is fret 3 of the A string, fret 2, open A, and then G, where the lowest note is that 3 on the low E string. Okay, so if we were to just highlight these bass notes, oops, how do I get this to, there we go. So if I was to highlight these red, you can see that this string of notes creates the melody. All right, so if we go back to our map right here, when we play D chord, so this gets a little bit tricky because the notes within the chord are not highlighted, but use your imagination here. Imagine that the D chord, that this chord symbol right here is highlighted within this map. You'd have the open D string and then these 3 notes within your D chord. Okay? But now when we're talking about a walk down, we're only concerned with these lower notes. All right, so let's look at this. It goes here, and then we walk down to here, then to here, then to here, and then to here. All right, you can use your ear to find these notes if you want. But if you have this map in front of you, you could just look at it and you'd be like, okay, well here are my options. This just makes it easier for me. And so the idea is, how do we get from a D chord to a G chord? You hear how abrupt that change is? It doesn't sound bad, but if you are John Lennon and you're like, I just want to make this as sweet and melodic as possible, I want some notes in between there that lead me stepwise down to the G chord. So there you go. 1, 2, we're just walking down the ladder. 3, 4, and then there we go. Okay. And this is a little bit, Jim C just said, how in the Busted Fingers do you play D over C? Here you go, man. With your pinky.
If you were doing it that way, would you play the D with the pinky to start with, and then just put the other finger down, or would you move both fingers?
I would play that like this. I know here. Let me share. Actually, I'd play a regular D chord. Then I'd reach with the pinky to fret 3. Okay, that can suck for some people, and if that sucks for you, like, and I don't mean your playing abilities, I mean pain. Like, if you exclaim, "Oh, that sucks! I don't like that," you could take this middle finger that is right here and reach it across and put it there and leave this open E exposed. You could do that. That's cool too.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Or you could just do the pinky. Okay. So let's talk about this. We might land the plane 2 minutes late today, but if anybody's got to jump, no worries. But I just want to walk through the fingering of this progression here so that you can have it, because this is just a fun riff to play. But we've covered the meat of our presentation. This is just let's learn how to play this pre-chorus in this Beatles song because it sounds sick. Okay, so I'm just going to walk you through what I do here. Open D. All right, and then we just talked about 2 different ways to play this chord. You can either take your pinky and reach it all the way to fret 3. And if you mute your D string, that's okay. That's fine. The other way is that we go from our D chord and then we take our middle finger off of the D chord and put it on fret 3. That's cool too. Okay? And now this D sus4 over B, it's a scary sounding chord, but basically we just want to take our index finger and put it on fret 2 of the A string and bring the middle finger back to this note right here on your D chord. Okay? And then our D over A is a regular D chord, except we're going to play the low A string as our lowest note. All right, so if we were to take this all the way through, and what I'm doing is I'm just isolating the first note, the bass note, and then strumming it, even though it's not written that way, just to kind of bring out that bass note. So I go D, D over C, then I put my index finger on fret 2 for that D sus4 over B, and then D over A is a regular D chord. I just hit the open A, and then I go to a G chord. All right, so again, that's... All right, my friends, so big takeaways. Walk-ups and walk-downs are just melodies that are contained within the key, that are notes that are contained within our key, and they're usually in the bass. And what they do is they connect chords so that we can inject a little bit of extra sweetness, a little bit of extra catchiness. And the way to find those notes is just to hop to a note that's already contained within the key. And if you are a theory buff, you can just kind of like memorize that. But if you're not, like 99% of us that just like don't care to memorize all that information, you can use a chart and it'll show you exactly which notes you have available to you. And if you ever have any questions about, well, which key am I in? Which chart do I use? You can use something like this, and I'll put this in the email as well, so that you have this. And you would just look at your chord progression, and you would see which one of these rows contains the chords that I'm playing, and no other chords. Your chord progression might not contain every chord in the row, but it should not contain, like for the example of G, D, C, we can't use the key of C because it's got this D minor here and not a D. Oops, sorry, not a D. And one caveat, some chord progressions are written with chords that are out of key, and unfortunately we need to be on the lookout for those because they can kind of lead you astray. And if you got any questions, just hit me up, or you can ask that on a call, and I'll help you with that. But so what questions do we have? I'm here. I don't have to jump. So if anybody's got questions, I'm here.
Sorry, what was that last gotcha you just mentioned? I missed what you had said, that like they might hang you up there. I missed that last thing you just mentioned.
Yeah, so there are examples. Like, George, you posted a song that you wrote that contained a chord that didn't follow this playbook of chords that are contained within a key. Those chords are called non-diatonic. It's a really kind of scary word that just means not within the key. When the word diatonic means in the key. So that means that it would play by the rules of which chords are minor and which chords are major. There are progressions that contain chords that are out of key. Like, for example, the progression that you wrote, there was a chord in it that didn't make sense with the key. It sounded great, but they're rare, but they exist. And if you are trying to choose one of these diagrams for your walk down notes, and you have a chord progression that has a key that I have a chord progression with a chord that's out of key, it might turn you around and make you think you're in a different key than you actually are. And if that's the case, just do your best to find what key has the most chords in common with this here, and try that diagram. And if it doesn't feel right, maybe go to a different one that has this, has some of the chords in it. Just use your ear at that point.
Gotcha. Great, thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else got any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
So if I can't help it, but I'm looking at this, the note maps, also trying to extend it to like using that as a tool for helping figure out how to, pardon the language, but like fuck around within a chord.
I'm highly offended by that language.
So, for example, if I'm just playing the chord of A, I can just look at that and go, okay, well, like as long as I'm keeping A in the chord, I can also just move my fingers around on those stones within A, and that works without.
It depends on which key you're in, because you would need to know what other chords surround your A chord, because it would help you identify which key you're in. Because if you notice, the key of E has an A chord in it, and the key of A has an A chord in it. So if your surrounding chords tell you you're in the key of A, then you would use this. If your surrounding chords tell you you're in the key of E, which also contains an A, then you would use this. So you notice that even though the key of A and the key of E both contain an A chord, their note maps are different. So,
well, if I'm just wanting to isolate, just for the sake of figuring this out, like which notes belong in the key of A, I don't know if this is the right way to do it, but I'm thinking like, okay, so just play the A, and then just.
And are you using this, Sandra?
Yeah.
Okay, so then that means
just like moving my other fingers around on those other stones.
Yep. So
okay.
then
just
that
so
means...
I hear it. Okay, that's telling me that all of those other stones are appropriate for that key. meaning,
That's
and
right.
then okay.
Yep, that's right. So
Okay.
if you if you're playing an A chord and you jump to any of these stones, it means that you are choosing notes that are within the key of A. But if you're playing an A chord and you jump to any of these stones, that means that you're noodling in the key of E, and both are appropriate because both actually do contain an A chord. But the way that it'll feel, and actually that'd be an awesome experiment for everybody to try, is just see how different it feels to play an A chord and noodle with some notes here, and then play an A chord and noodle with some notes here. It's gonna feel like a different color, you know. So yeah, great question. Oh, thank you as always for your questions, because I forgot to mention this point. When you are in a key, the note maps will not change no matter which chord you're playing in these rows. You could be playing a D minor, an E minor. If you're in the key of C, this is the note map you will use. You will only change note maps if you're in a different key. Okay? So and most of the time your song won't change keys. All right? So it doesn't matter which chord you're playing. If it's in the key of C, you know, even if it's a D minor, an E minor, you'll still use this map. This map doesn't change for you while you're in the key of C. Does that make sense? I wanted to throw that out there. So somebody might ask, like, okay, so if I'm playing a C, then I use this note map. But then if I change to a G chord, then I should use this note map, right? No, as long as you're still using the chords within the key of C, you will always use this note map, even if you're changing chords. Okay? The only time you change note maps is if you recalibrate to a different key, and you've got a whole different set of chords that you're using. Okay? Right on. All right. Anybody else got anything?
Yeah, James, I had a question.
Sure. What's up, Tim?
So if let's take the key of A as an example. If I use other chords that are on those stones in the key of A, for instance, I see a D major seventh in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I stay on those stones, I can still use the same walk downs because I'm really not going outside of that framework, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. So the as long as you are in the key, meaning you're using the chords that are contained within this row, you can still use all of the same notes that are within all the same stones that are on this diagram. That's right.
Okay. It's when I get outside of that becomes the problem, right? So if I would do an A sus2, a D major seventh, anything that I see in there right now, I can use and use the same walk downs.
That's right. Yep. As long as the chord is contained in the row, as long as you're in the same key, these will be the ones that are your options to stay in the key. And just to mention, like, you can choose a note that's outside of this. It'll sound unique, and actually that tension can create really cool things. And you should experiment, intentionally breaking the rules. But to stay within bounds, yeah, as long as your chord is within this list, then all of these would still be fair game. And you're mentioning extended chords like D sus2 or a D major 7. At its core, a D sus2 or a D major 7 is a D chord, and the sus2 or the major 7 is like just a little shading that we add on top of the D chord. So at its foundation, it's still a D chord. So that's why those chords, even though they have extra shading, like the sus2 or the major 7, it's still a D chord at its foundation.
Right. So if I would do something like if I would go to a D7, that won't work. It's not in there. I'd have to do something different.
Well, a D7 is an interesting anomaly to the rules. The 7 chords are an interesting anomaly to the rules that blues gave us that is a note that's not contained within the key, and that's why it kind of sounds really interesting and cool. It became so common in blues that the seventh note, this guy right here, even though it's not in the key of D, we accept it as listeners because we're just so used to hearing it. So that's a great question. Basically, if your foundation of your chord is a D major, then any kind of D major, including a D7, will work.
Will work.
So,
Okay.
yep,
Okay.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you got it. So the main thing you want to ask yourself is the D or any chord, does it match with the minor or major designation within there? The extra shading on top, the major sevens, the dominant sevens, the suspended seconds or fourths, those are all addition on they're added on top of the foundation, which is major or minor. So as long as it's major or minor in the right location, then that will work.
Perfect. Thank you.
You got it. And stoked you came, Tim. Great to meet you.
James,
Yeah,
as
you
someone
too.
who claims to not be into theory, you've got this down.
It only comes from like the incredible questions that people ask, because like it means that I need to figure out a way to like explain what's going on under the hood. So I always say that like you can create 99% of the music you want to create without needing to go super deep into the theory, but that last 1%, it really can take your enjoyment of it to a whole new level when you know why things work, why they sound good. So that's my take on theory. It's not vital, but if you know it, you're just gonna love the songs you hear so much more. That's my take.
Thank you.
You got it.
I have one lingering question.
Sure.
When you talk about the walk down, the big idea is to pull a single note out on the way, always, versus, I mean, I guess it. Okay, so how do I ask this question? So if I'm transitioning from A to E,
A to E.
the chord A to E. Is it imperative to pull the A out as an individual note on the way to E, or just walk? I don't know if you can see what I'm doing.
So like, are you're asking if you need to isolate the single note on your way to the next chord, like?
Right, because I think I need to work on doing that, but my tendency is just to jump ahead during the progression and pick out, like right now I'm going from A, I'm putting my index on I'm going from A toward A, and then I put my index on the A note to get to E, chord E on the way. But I'm not necessarily pulling it out, I'm just strumming within,
Yeah, you can strum within it. So like an example would be like if in this G to E minor, you wouldn't need to necessarily pick out these notes on their own. You could strum all 6 strings, and just the fact that these notes in the walk down happen to be the lowest note, you still kind of get the same vibe, if that makes sense. It's just a little less pronounced.
Okay.
Yeah. Good question. Cool. Anybody else? I'm hanging. Cool. All right. Well, if anybody has any questions, feel free to email. Feel free to leave it in the group. We've got Fuck It Friday coming up. Pardon my French. That will not change anytime soon, though. I assume that if you're hanging here, you're okay with it. FIF on Friday. So you'll see the post, and the idea is just to share a video of a song that you're working on before it feels ready. And again, the idea is to just get comfortable with the humanity of it all. Screw the idea of perfection. That's not what this is about. We must defend our humanity, not to get weird, but AI, it's coming for us. And we play folk guitar because we want to be rooted in that humanity. Screw the perfection. So anyways, that's what FIF is all about. It's just like respecting the journey. Everybody here knows what a song in progress sounds like, and nobody is expecting perfection, and would love for you guys to be proud of what you're doing without the need for perfection. So, guys, awesome to hang with you. Great to meet some new folks. Great to see the people that have been here for a year and a half and come every week. Bob, let's get that open mic in the calendar. And Ed, I would love to support you as you make your way to the stage. And Becca, I know we got some things to chat about for your project. And so anybody that has things that they're working on, I want to cheer you on. So hit me up, and let's keep rocking this. Next week, the call is Wednesday at 8:30 p.m., not Thursday at 12:30. We alternate every other week. All right. And if you are not receiving the notification emails, email me and I'll put you back on the list. Sometimes people get knocked off the list by accident. You should be getting a notification email.